Tonight, we explore a different fate for Jon Snow, a world where, on the night he learned that his father had been executed and his brother had marched south to war, Jon Snow did not let Sam and his friends talk him into staying. He rode, not toward a crown, not toward a claim, toward his brother, because Robb was the only family left who could still be saved, and the vows that bound Jon to the wall were words, and Robb was blood. But desertion from the Night's Watch is death, and a man who breaks one oath learns that the breaking follows him. Jon would ride into Robb's war as a deserter and a bastard, carrying a sword that wasn't his to keep and a guilt that wouldn't quiet. He would become the thing Robb needed most and trusted least, a brother who had already proven he would abandon a vow for love. And the war would test, again and again, whether a man who left the wall to save his family could keep them from the fate that the Game of Thrones reserves for Starks. This is the story of what might have happened if Jon Snow left the wall to fight beside Robb Stark. Castle Black, the night he left, 298 AC. Jon Snow left Castle Black on a stolen horse in the dark. He had not stolen the horse exactly, it was his to ride, assigned to him, the specific institutional arrangement of the Watch, where nothing was yours but some things were yours to use. But riding it through the gate at night without leave made the using into stealing, and the stealing was the smallest of the crimes he was committing. So he did not spend long on the distinction. The crime that mattered was desertion. He had thought about it for 3 days. 3 days since the raven came that said Eddard Stark was dead, executed on the steps of the Great Sept of Baelor, on the order of a boy king, for a treason he had not committed. 3 days since the second raven, the one that said Robb had called the banners and was marching south. 3 days of sitting in the common hall and the training yard and his own cold cell with the specific weight of a man who knew what he was going to do and had not yet let himself admit it. Maester Aemon had seen it first. The old man had found him in the rookery. Jon had gone there to be alone, which was its own mistake, because the rookery was where Aemon spent his hours, and being alone there meant being alone with a blind man who saw more than men with eyes. "You're going to leave," Aemon had said. Jon had not answered. "I have lived a long time," Aemon said. "I have watched many men stand where you are standing. I will tell you what I told myself once, when the ravens came with news that my family was burning." He turned his blind face toward Jon. "I will not tell you that you are wrong to want to go. I will tell you that the wanting and the going are different, and that the wall does not forgive the going, and that you should know the cost before you pay it." "My father is dead," Jon said. "Yes." "My brother is at war." "Yes." "And I'm here, cleaning a rookery, sworn to a wall." Jon held the old man's gaze, even though the gaze couldn't be held. "What good is the vow if it keeps me from the only thing that matters?" "That," Aemon said, "is the question every man in black asks eventually. Most of us answer it by staying. Some of us answer it by going." He folded his papery hands. "I stayed. I have spent 60 years wondering whether the staying was wisdom or cowardice. I still don't know." He turned back to his ravens. "Go or stay, Jon Snow. But don't pretend the choice is simple. It will follow you whichever way you ride." Jon had left the rookery. He had gone to his cell, and he had sat with Ghost, who watched him pack with the specific direwolf stillness that Ghost brought to everything. And he had thought about Sam, who would try to stop him. Sam and Pip and Gren, who had ridden out once already to bring him back when he tried this before and failed to commit. This time, he did not give them the chance. He left before they woke. He left the note he'd written for Sam on the bed. "I'm sorry. He's my brother. I have to. Don't follow me. You'll only get hurt, and it won't change anything. Look after Ghost if he won't come." And he took Longclaw, which Mormont had given him, which was the thing that made the leaving worse, because Mormont had given it to him as a gift and as a bond, and Jon was repaying the bond by deserting. He almost left Longclaw. He stood in the cell with the sword in his hands and thought, "This isn't mine. It's the Watcher's. It's Mormont's. Taking it makes me a thief on top of a deserter." Then he thought, Robb is marching to war, and I'm bringing him a brother and a Valyrian steel sword, and the sword will save lives that being principled about the sword will not. He took the sword. Ghost came with him. Of course Ghost came. Ghost had never once failed to come, and the wolf padded out through the gate beside the horse and into the dark with the specific silence that made the desertion feel witnessed by something larger than the watch. The gate guard was a boy named Todder who owed Jon for a kindness and who looked the other way, and who would pay for the looking later in ways that Jon did not let himself think about as he rode south. He rode through the night. He rode through the night and into the morning, and he did not look back at the wall, because looking back was the thing that turned people to salt, and he had enough salt in him already. Sam. What the morning found. 298 AC. Sam found the note at dawn. He had come to wake Jon for the morning's work. They had been assigned together. The specific, small mercy of the watch's rota that had put the two friends on the same task, and he had found the cell empty and the bed made, and the note on the pillow and Ghost gone. He read it twice. Then he sat down on Jon's bed, and he held the note, and he did the thing that Sam did when the world handed him something too large, which was to go very still and let the largeness move through him before he tried to do anything about it. Pip found him there. "Where's Snow?" Sam handed him the note. Pip read it. His face did the thing that faces did. "We have to tell Mormont." "I know. If we don't tell him, and they find out we knew." "I know, Pip." Sam stood. He was not built for this. Not built for the cold or the watch or the specific hard arithmetic of a place where loyalty to a friend and duty to the order were the same kind of thing and pointed in opposite directions. "We tell Mormont. We tell him the truth. Jon left to find his brother, and he asked us not to follow, and we didn't know until morning." That last part's true, at least. All of it's true. Sam held the note. "I'm not going to lie about Jon. I'm going to tell Mormont exactly what happened, and I'm going to ask him to..." He stopped. "I don't know what I'm going to ask him. To not send riders. To not send riders." Sam looked at the empty cell. "They won't catch him anyway. He's got a night's start and Ghost with him, and he rides better than anyone they'd send." He folded the note. "But I'm going to ask anyway. So that someone asks." They went to Mormont. The Lord Commander received the news the way he received everything, which was with the specific weathered stillness of a man who had been in the watch for decades and who had watched it lose men to death and cold and desertion and the slow erosion of purpose. He read the note. He set it down. He looked at Sam and Pip with the specific assessment of a commander, deciding how much of his anger belonged to the two boys in front of him and how much belonged to the boy who was gone. "He took the sword," Mormont said. "Yes, my lord," Sam said. "Longclaw. I gave him Longclaw." "Yes?" Mormont stood. He walked to the window. The wall outside it. The enormous fact of the wall, the thing that all of their lives were organized around. "His father's dead," Mormont said. "His brother's at war." "Yes, my lord." "He's 17, and the only family he has left is marching to die in the south, and we're asking him to stand on a wall and watch." Mormont's voice had something in it that was not quite forgiveness, but was in the neighborhood. "I deserted once. Did you know that? Not from the watch, from a different kind of duty. When I was young." He looked at the wall. "I went back. It was the worst thing I ever did. The going back. Or the best. I've never decided." Sam said nothing. "I won't send riders," Mormont said. "Not because I forgive it. Because riders won't catch him. And because the men I'd send would be men I can't spare. And because..." He stopped. "Because some part of me understands it. And a commander who sends men to die for a thing he understands is a worse commander than one who lets a deserter go." He turned from the window. "But understand this, both of you. He's a deserter now. If he ever comes back to this wall, the law is the law, and I cannot unmake it. The punishment for desertion is death. If Jon Snow returns to the Night's Watch, I will have no choice." He held their gaze. "Pray he never returns. It's the only mercy left for him here, Sam held the Lord Commander's gaze. "Yes, my lord," he said. He took Ghost's empty water bowl from Jon's cell that afternoon, and he kept it, for no reason he could name, except that it was a thing of Jon's, and Jon was gone, and keeping it was the only thing he could do. The road, what followed him. 298 AC. Jon rode south for 9 days. He kept off the King's Road where he could. A man in Night's Watch. Black riding south alone was a specific kind of visible. Everyone who saw him knew what he was, knew that a black brother riding away from the wall was a deserter, knew that the bounty for a returned deserter was real coin. He kept to the side roads and the forest tracks, and he rode at the edges of the day, dawn and dusk, and he slept in the cold without fires, because fires were what got deserters caught. Ghost hunted for both of them. This was the thing that kept Jon alive on the road, the wolf, who brought down hares and once a young deer, who ranged ahead and came back when there were men on the road so that Jon had warning, who was the specific difference between a deserter alone in the wilderness and a deserter with a direwolf. Men who might have tried for the bounty took one look at Ghost and decided the coin wasn't worth it. On the 6th day, 3 men tried anyway. They came at his camp at dusk, deserter hunters, the specific ugly profession that the war had produced, men who made coin returning black brothers to the wall or to whatever lord would pay for the catching. They came at his camp with steel and the confidence of men who had done this before and who saw a 17-year-old boy alone in the dark. They did not see Ghost until Ghost was among them. It was over fast. Jon killed one with Longclaw, the Valyrian steel doing the thing Valyrian steel did, which was cut through boiled leather and the man inside it without slowing, and Ghost took the second by the throat before the man finished turning, and the third ran into the dark, and Jon let him run because chasing him meant leaving the camp, and the camp was the only thing keeping Jon warm. He sat in the dark afterward with 2 dead men and the specific cold understanding that he had just killed a man who was, in the strict accounting of the law, in the right. The man had been trying to return a deserter. Jon was the deserter. The man had been upholding the law, and Jon had killed him for it. This was the cost Eamon had warned him about. It would not be the last of it. He buried neither man. He had no time and no tools, and the ground was hard. He took their horses, 2 more horses, which meant he could ride one and rest the others and move faster. And he rode on into the dark, and the leaving of the bodies unburied was its own small wound to the part of him that was Ned Stark's son, and that believed the dead deserved better than to be left for crows. He thought, I'm becoming something the wall made, and the road is finishing. He thought, Robb won't recognize me. He thought, I have to get to Robb before there's nothing left of me to recognize. He rode on. The camp, what Robb said, 298 AC. Robb's camp was in the Riverlands, and Grey Wind found Jon before the sentries did. The 2 direwolves met at the edge of the camp in the grey morning, Grey Wind coming out of the lines at a run when he caught the scent, Ghost stopping. The 2 of them circling once in the specific wolf greeting that was older than the boys they belonged to. Then they were still, side by side, 2 enormous wolves at the edge of an army, and the sentries who came to investigate found a deserter in watch black standing with 2 direwolves and did not know what to do with the sight. They took him to Robb. Robb was in the command tent with the Great Jon and Lord Glover and the maps, the specific machinery of a war council that had been running since before dawn. He looked up when they brought Jon in, and for a moment he did not move at all. Jon, Robb said. Robb, the tent had gone quiet. The lords were looking at the deserter in black and the king in the north, who had just said his name like it was a thing he'd dropped and found again. Leave us, Robb said. The lords left. The Greatjon last, looking at Jon with the specific umber assessment of a man deciding whether the new arrival was a problem. And then they were gone, and it was just the 2 brothers and the 2 wolves and the maps. Robb crossed the tent and embraced him. It was hard and complete, and it lasted a long time, the embrace of 2 people who had each privately believed they might not see the other again. And when Robb stepped back, his eyes were wet, and he didn't pretend they weren't. You're supposed to be at the wall, Robb said. I left. You took a vow. I did. Jon, Robb stopped. He was processing it in real time. The specific Robb process of building toward a conclusion out loud rather than arriving at it in silence. You're a deserter. Do you understand what that? If anyone sends you back, it's death. I know. Jon held his gaze. I knew when I left anyway. Why? Because father is dead and you're marching to war, and you're the only family I have left who I can still do something about. Jon's voice was low and flat, the specific Jon register. Sansa and Arya are in King's Landing, and I can't reach them. Bran and Rickon are at Winterfell, and they're safe for now. You're here, riding into a war against the Lannisters, and I have a sword, and I know how to use it, and I was on a wall 800 miles away cleaning a rookery. He held Robb's gaze. I couldn't do it. I couldn't stand on the wall and watch you ride to war and do nothing. So I left. Robb looked at him for a long moment. The vows, Robb said. The watch. You believed in that. When you went north, you believed in it. I did. And now my father's head is on a spike in King's Landing, and the vows didn't stop that, and standing on the wall wouldn't have stopped it, and the only thing the vows were doing was keeping me from you. Jon held the gaze. I still believe the wall matters. I believe what's north of it is real, and that the watch is needed. I couldn't be the man who stood there while his family died. Maybe that makes me a bad brother of the watch. It's the only kind of brother I could stand to be. Robb sat down on the edge of the map table. I can't make this clean, Robb said. You understand that. You're a deserter. My lords are going to look at you and see a man who broke a sacred vow. Some of them believe in the watch, the old families, the ones who've sent sons north for 1,000 years. They're going to see what you did as what I am, a deserter and a bastard. Jon held his gaze. I'm not asking you to make it clean. I'm asking you to let me fight for you. Put me wherever you need me. Give me the jobs nobody wants. I don't need a command, and I don't need honor, and I don't need anyone to pretend I'm something I'm not. He held the gaze. I need to be useful to my brother in a war. That's all I came for. Robb looked at him. He looked at Jon, at the brother he'd grown up beside, never quite equal. The bastard true-born distance, always a third thing in the room. And now the distance was a different shape, because Jon had done something that Robb both understood completely and could not officially sanction. You'll fight with my household guard, Robb said. Not a command. You're right that I can't give you a command. The lords wouldn't follow a deserter, and I won't ask them to. But you'll be near me. You'll fight where I fight. He held the gaze. And Jon, the watch thing. We don't hide it, because hiding it makes it worse when it comes out. And it will come out. But we don't lead with it either. You're my brother who came to fight. That's the story. It's true. We let it be the story. All right? And you keep the sword out of sight when you can. Robb nodded at Longclaw. That's Mormont's sword. Valyrian steel. Anyone who knows the watch knows that sword. It tells the whole story before you open your mouth. It saved my life twice already on the road. Then keep it. Just be aware of what it says. Robb stood. He put his hand on Jon's shoulder. You shouldn't have come. I'm glad you came. Both of those are true. And I'm going to be holding both of them for a while. I know the feeling, Jon said. Catelyn, what she couldn't forgive. 298 AC. Catelyn Stark found out Jon had arrived within the hour. She came to Robb's tent in the specific controlled fury that Catelyn brought to things involving Jon Snow. 15 years of it. The accumulated weight of a woman who'd been forced to raise her husband's bastard alongside her own children, and who had never once let herself be cruel to the boy, and had also never once let herself be warm. The specific, cold middle distance that was its own kind of cruelty. He's a deserter, Catelyn said. He's my brother, Robb said. He's a deserter from the Night's Watch, Robb. He took a sacred vow before the old gods and the new, and he broke it. There is no oath more binding in all the 7 kingdoms, and he broke it. She held her son's gaze. If word spreads that the king in the north harbors a deserter, that you've welcomed a man who broke the most sacred vow there is, what does that say about the oaths your bannermen have sworn to you? Robb was quiet for a moment. It was, he recognized, a real argument. His mother did not make unreal arguments. It says, I value my brother over a technicality, Robb said. It's not a technicality. It's the foundation. The whole North is built on men keeping their word. Your bannermen follow you because their fathers swore oaths to your fathers, and those oaths held. If oaths can be broken when they become inconvenient. Father's honor didn't keep him alive, Robb said. Father's honor didn't keep him alive. Father did everything right, kept every vow, told the truth at every turn, and they put his head on a spike for it. His voice had something in it now. Jon broke a vow to come fight for his family. Father kept every vow he ever made, and it killed him. I'm having trouble right now, this week, seeing the vow keeping as clearly as you do. Catelyn looked at her son. The grief was in the tent with them. Ned's grief. It was in everything now. Every decision, every argument. The specific, raw wound of a man executed 3 weeks ago, whose absence was a presence in every room. He looks like Ned, Catelyn said. Suddenly. Unexpectedly. He always looked like Ned. That was the thing I could never. Every time I looked at him, I saw my husband's face on a child that wasn't mine, and it was like a wound that wouldn't close. She held Robb's gaze. And now Ned is dead, and that face is the last place I'll ever see my husband's, and it's on the one person in the world I have the most reason to resent. Robb was quiet. I'm not asking you to love him, Robb said. I'm asking you to let him stay, to let him fight. He came 800 miles through deserter hunters to be here. He killed men on the road to get here. He's not here for a claim or a crown or anything except us. He held her gaze. He's Father's son. Whatever else he is. He's Father's son, and Father is dead, and Jon is the piece of him that rode through the night to be with us. Catelyn held her son's gaze for a long time. I won't fight you on it, she said finally. I won't pretend to be glad. But I won't fight you. She turned to go. At the tent flap, she stopped. Robb, the deserter thing is real. Don't let your love for him blind you to it. The Lords will use it. The Lannisters will use it if they learn of it. A king who shelters an oathbreaker is a king whose own oaths look weaker. She held his gaze. Manage it. However you feel about him, manage it. She left. Robb sat with that. It was, he thought, the most honest his mother had ever been about Jon. She hadn't softened. She hadn't forgiven. But she told him the truth about why she was the way she was. And the truth had a grief in it that Robb hadn't known was there. And the grief made the coldness make a kind of sense it never had before. He went to find Jon. The Lords, what they made of him. 298 AC. The Greatjon was the first to test him. This was the Greatjon's way. Jon had heard the stories. The night the banners were called. The Greatjon drawing steel on Robb and losing 2 fingers to Grey Wind, and then laughing about it and becoming Robb's most devoted bannerman in the same breath. The Greatjon tested things by pushing them and seeing what pushed back. He pushed Jon in the training yard, 2 days after Jon arrived. Watch Deserter, the Greatjon said, loud enough for the men to hear. He was enormous, the specific Umbersite, and he loomed over Jon with the deliberate intimidation of a man who used his body the way other men used words. Broke his vow and ran south. Some men would call that the act of a craven. The yard went quiet. The men watching. The specific, charged quiet of a moment that was going to become something. Jon looked up at the Greatjon. Some men would, Jon said. You're not asking what some men would call it. You're asking what I'd call it. Am I? You drew steel on your king the night the banners were called, Jon said, evenly. Lost 2 fingers for it. Some men would call that treason. Robb called it the act of a man who needed to know if his king would stand up. Jon held the enormous gaze. I left the wall to fight for my brother. You can call it craven if you want. Or you can hand me a sword and find out whether I run. The Greatjon looked at him. The yard held its breath. Then the Greatjon laughed, the huge umber laugh, the one that came from the whole body, the laugh that had become Robb's the night the banners were called. Hand the deserter a sword, the Greatjon said. Let's find out. They fought. Jon was good. He had been good before the wall, and the wall had made him better, and the road had made him harder, and he fought the Great Jon's man, not the Great Jon himself. The Great Jon was too old for the yard, but his best young swordsman, and Jon put the man down twice and took a hit that would bruise for a week and got back up both times. The Great Jon watched. When it was done, he clapped Jon on the shoulder hard enough to stagger him. "He doesn't run," the Great Jon announced to the yard. "Deserter or not, the boy doesn't run." He looked at Jon. "You fight with my men when you're not with the King's Guard. A sword that good shouldn't sit idle." It was not acceptance. The Northern Lords did not give acceptance that easily, and the deserter thing would follow Jon through the whole war, brought up in the specific moments when men wanted to wound him. But it was the Great Jon's version of a verdict, and the Great Jon's verdict carried weight, and the men in the yard had watched the deserter refuse to be cowed by the largest man in the north. It was a beginning. Jon would take what beginnings he could get. Theon, the other brother, 298 AC. Theon Greyjoy did not know what to make of Jon's arrival. The two of them had grown up together at Winterfell, not as friends exactly, but as the two who didn't quite belong, the bastard and the hostage, the boys who ate at the high table or the side table depending on whose company was present, and who both understood, in different ways, the specific experience of being raised inside a family that wasn't fully theirs. They had never liked each other much. Theon had been too loud and too proud, and too quick to remind Jon that a bastard ranked below a hostage prince, and Jon had been too quiet and too watchful, and too obviously Ned's favourite in a way that Theon, who wanted Ned's approval and never quite got it, had resented. Now they were both in Robb's war, and the old dynamic had nowhere useful to go. Theon found Jon at the horse lines one evening. "The deserter," Theon said. "Come to fight for Robb. Very noble. Theon, you know what they'll say. The Lords." Behind Robb's back, Theon leaned against a post. He had the specific Theon manner, the performance of ease over something that was never quite easy. "They'll say the king in the north keeps an oathbreaker close. They'll say it reflects on Robb. Every time you're in the room, some lord is doing arithmetic about what your presence costs him." "I know," Jon said. "You know." Theon looked at him. "And you came anyway, knowing you'd be a stone around his neck." Jon turned from the horse he was tending. "He's my brother," Jon said. "I'm not going to stand on a wall while he fights a war. You wouldn't either. If it were." He stopped, reconsidered. "Actually, I don't know what you'd do. You've spent 10 years not knowing whether you're a Stark or a Greyjoy. I imagine that makes the question of who you'd cross a war for complicated." It landed harder than Jon intended. He saw it land. Theon's face did the specific thing that Theon's face did when someone touched the actual wound under the performance. "That's Theon started, I'm sorry," Jon said. "And meant it. That was crueler than I meant. We both grew up sideways in that family, Theon. Neither of us quite belonged. I shouldn't use your version of it as a weapon. I know how it feels to have it used as one." Theon looked at him. It was, perhaps, the first honest thing the two of them had ever said to each other. 14 years of low-grade rivalry, and it took a war and a desertion to produce a single moment of recognition between them. Two boys raised sideways, both of them trying to prove they belonged to a family that had never fully claimed them. "Robb trusts me," Theon said. "He's sending me to the Iron Islands to treat with my father, to bring the Greyjoy fleet into the war on Robb's side." He said it with the specific Theon pride, the hunger for significance. "He trusts me with that. The whole naval strategy, my father's ships." Jon went still. He knew Balon Greyjoy by reputation, the old Reaver, the man who'd rebelled once and lost and never stopped resenting it. He knew the Iron Islands by reputation. And he knew the way you knew things in your gut before you could argue them. That sending Theon Greyjoy back to the father who'd given him up as a hostage was the kind of plan that looked good on a map and went wrong in the human places that maps didn't show. "Theon," Jon said carefully, "your father gave you to the Starks 10 years ago, as a hostage. You've been raised a Stark for a decade." He held the gaze. "When you go back to him, when you stand in front of Balon Greyjoy and ask him to fight for the boy who's holding his old enemy's banner, are you sure he'll see his son? Or will he see a Stark wearing his son's face?" Theon's jaw tightened. "He'll see his heir," Theon said. "His blood, the future of his house." "I hope so." Jon held the gaze. "I'm not saying don't go. I'm saying Go carefully. Fathers who gave you away don't always want you back. And the Iron Islands don't think the way the North thinks. You've been a Stark for 10 years. Make sure you remember how to be a Greyjoy before you stake Robb's whole naval strategy on it. Theon looked at him for a long moment. You don't know my father, Theon said. No, Jon agreed, but I know what it's like to want a father's approval and not be sure you'll get it. We have that in common, you and I. It's the one thing we've always had in common. He held the gaze. Be careful, Theon, for your sake and Robb's. Theon left without answering. Jon watched him go and felt the specific unease that he couldn't name yet. The sense of a piece being moved on a board in a way that would matter later, badly, in a place no one was looking. He told Robb about it that night. I think sending Theon to Boulogne is a mistake, Jon said. Robb looked up from the maps. Theon's loyal. He's been my friend since we were boys. He's the best chance I have at the Greyjoy fleet. He's loyal to you, Jon said. I'm not questioning that. I'm questioning whether Boulogne Greyjoy will let him stay loyal. You're sending a man back to a father who resents the people who raised him, and asking him to choose between the family that made him and the family that claims him by blood. He held Robb's gaze. That's a hard thing to ask of anyone. It's a harder thing to ask of someone who spent his whole life not knowing which family he belongs to. Robb was quiet. I need the ships, Jon. I know. I'm not saying don't try for them. I'm saying don't stake everything on Theon's loyalty surviving contact with his father. Jon held the gaze. Send someone with him, a second envoy. Someone whose loyalty isn't being tested by the trip. Make the offer to Boulogne through channels that don't run through a man being pulled in 2 directions. Robb considered it. You think Theon would betray me? Robb said. I think Theon would never mean to, Jon said. And I think meaning to isn't always what matters. Balon Greyjoy is going to put his son in a room and make him choose. And I don't know which way Theon breaks, and neither do you. And staking your naval strategy on a coin you can't see is the kind of thing that loses wars. He held the gaze. You asked me to counsel you. That's my counsel. Send Theon if you must. But don't send him alone, and don't build your plans on the assumption that he comes back with the fleet. Robb looked at the map for a long moment. I'll send a second envoy, Robb said finally. Lord Glover's brother, with separate authority to treat with the Iron Islands, so that if it goes wrong, I have another thread. He looked at Jon. You've got a dark way of thinking, brother. You see the ways things break. The wall teaches you that, Jon said. Everything up there is about the ways things break. The cold, the dark, the men. You learn to see the failure before it happens, because the failure is always coming. He held the gaze. It's not a happy way to think, but it's useful in a war. Robb sent Theon to the Iron Islands. He also sent Robett Glover, separately, with his own authority. It was a small thing, a hedge, a second thread. It would matter more than either of them knew. Whispering Wood, the first battle. 298 AC. The Whispering Wood was where Jon learned what Robb had become. He had known Robb his whole life. The charming one, the true-born one. The boy who'd been raised to lead and who wore the leading easily. The specific Robb gift of making people want to follow him. But he had known that Robb in the yard and the hall, not in the field. The Robb in the field was something else. The plan was Robb's. Catch Jaime Lannister's host in the Whispering Wood at night, in the broken ground, where the Lannister cavalry advantage meant nothing, and the northern knowledge of fighting in the dark and the cold meant everything. It was a good plan. It was better than good. It was the specific kind of plan that came from a commander who understood not just tactics, but the men he was fighting, who knew that Jaime Lannister was brilliant and aggressive and would not expect to be caught, because catching Jaime Lannister was not a thing that happened. Jon fought beside Robb's household guard. The battle was chaos in the dark. They always were, Jon would learn. The songs made battles into clean things, and they were not clean. They were noise and confusion and the specific terror of not knowing in the dark whether the shape coming at you was a friend or an enemy until it was close enough to kill you. Jon killed in the dark. He killed with Longclaw, and he killed with the specific economy that the road had taught him. No wasted motion, no flourishes. The killing as a task rather than a glory. Ghost killed beside him. The two direwolves were loose in the battle, Grey Wind with Robb, Ghost with Jon, and the Lannister men who had never seen a direwolf broke when the wolves came among them. The specific animal terror that no amount of training prepared a man for. A wolf the size of a pony with red eyes coming out of the dark was not a thing that soldiers had a response to. By dawn, it was over. Jaime Lannister was captured. Robb's forces had him surrounded by dawn, not killed, which Jon understood was the correct decision, and which half the Northern Lords wanted to undo, because a dead Jaime Lannister was vengeance, and a live Jaime Lannister was leverage, and Robb had chosen leverage over vengeance, which was the choice a king made and not the choice a grieving son wanted to make. Jon found Robb after the battle, in the grey light, surrounded by the specific aftermath that the songs never showed. The wounded, the dying, the men walking among the bodies looking for friends. The smell of it. "You did it," Jon said. "We did it." Robb was bloodied and exhausted and lit up with the specific terrible energy of a man who had just won something enormous. "Did you see, Jon, did you see the left flank when the Karstark men came through? I saw. We have Jaime Lannister." Robb said it like he couldn't quite believe it. "We have the Kingslayer, Tywin's son. We can trade him for Sansa, for Arya, for..." He stopped. The specific stop of a man remembering that some trades couldn't be made. "For the girls. We can get the girls back." Jon looked at his brother. He looked at Robb in the dawn light, bloodied and victorious, and 17 years old, and carrying an army and a war and the hopes of the entire North. And he felt the specific, complicated thing that he would feel for the rest of the war, which was pride and fear in equal measure. Pride at what Robb was, fear at what the being of it would cost him. "You're good at this," Jon said. "At war. At all of it. The leading. The men love you. The plan was, I've never seen anything like that plan." Jon held his gaze. "You were born for this. Father was born for this. And look where it got him," Robb said. The grief surfacing, the specific way it surfaced in Robb, suddenly, in the middle of victory. "I don't want to be good at war, Jon. I want father alive and the girls home and to go back to Winterfell and never see a battlefield again." He looked at the bodies. "I'm good at the thing I least want to be good at. That's not a gift. That's a sentence." Jon put his hand on his brother's shoulder. They stood in the dawn among the dead. The cost, what the desertion did, 298 AC. The desertion caught up with Jon in the form of Lord Rickard Karstark. Not as an enemy, Karstark was Robb's man, loyal, one of the great Northern Lords, his sons fighting and dying in Robb's war. But Karstark was also a man who believed in oaths the way the old Northern families believed in oaths, which was completely the specific bone-deep conviction that a man's word was the only thing that separated him from a beast. And Karstark had learned that Jon was a deserter from the Night's Watch, and the knowledge sat wrong in him. He brought it to Robb in front of the Lords. "Your Grace," Karstark said, in the War Council, with the specific formality that men used when they were about to say something difficult. "There's a matter that needs addressing. The man who fights with your household guard, Jon Snow, your brother." He held Robb's gaze. "He's a deserter from the Night's Watch." The tent went quiet. Jon was present. Robb kept him close in councils now, and he felt the specific attention of every lord in the tent turn toward him. The deserter, the thing that had been politely unspoken, now spoken aloud. "He is," Robb said, evenly. "He left the wall to fight for his family. I'm aware." "The punishment for desertion is death," Karstark said, "by the law of the Watch and the law of the Seven Kingdoms. Your own father, forgive me, Your Grace, your own father executed a deserter the very day you found those wolves. Lord Eddard believed in that law. He upheld it with his own sword." Karstark held the gaze. "And now his son shelters a deserter at his own table. What does that say about the king in the North's respect for the law his father died upholding?" It was, Jon recognized, a real argument. The same argument Catelyn had made. the specific problem that his presence created and that no amount of fighting well could fully dissolve. Robb opened his mouth to answer. Jon spoke first. "Lord Karstark is right," Jon said. The Tenth looked at him. "I'm a deserter," Jon said. "By the law, my life is forfeit. Lord Karstark is right about the law, and right that my presence here puts the king in the north in a difficult position. I won't pretend otherwise." He held Karstark's gaze. "But I'll tell you why I left. And then you can decide whether the law should take my head. My father was executed in King's Landing for a treason he didn't commit. My brother called the banners and marched to war. And I was on a wall 800 miles away, sworn to take no part in the wars of the realm, watching my family fight and die without me." He held the gaze. "I broke my vow. I don't deny it. I'd break it again. If you'd been on that wall, my lord, with your sons marching to war and your father's head on a spike, would you have stayed?" Karstark's jaw worked. His sons were in this war. The question landed exactly where Jon had aimed it. "That's not the law," Karstark said. "No," Jon agreed. "It's not. The law would have me stay on the wall while my family died, or take my head for leaving. I'm not arguing the law. I'm telling you what I chose and why, and letting you measure it against what you'd have done in my place." He held the gaze. "If the king in the north decides the law should take my head, I'll kneel for it. I won't run. I've done enough running. But I won't pretend I was wrong to choose my family. I'd make the same choice 100 times." The Tenth was silent. Robb watched. He did not intervene. He let Jon stand in front of the lords and make his own case, which was the specific respect that Robb had for his brother, the understanding that Jon would not want to be defended like a child. Karstark looked at Jon for a long moment. "My sons are in this war," Karstark said finally. His voice had changed. "Torren, Harrion, Eddard, they march with me. If I were on a wall and they were dying in a war..." He stopped, the specific stop of a man finding his own answer and not liking where it led. "I don't know what I'd do. I'd like to say I'd keep my vow. I don't know if it's true." He looked at Robb. "I won't press it, Your Grace," Karstark said. "The man fights well, and he's your brother, and he's made his case, honestly, which is more than most deserters would. But I'll say this." He looked back at Jon. "If you ever break your word to this army, the way you broke it to the Watch, deserter or not, brother to the king or not, I'll take your head myself. A man who breaks one oath bears watching. See that you don't make me watch you." "Fair," Jon said. "More than fair. I'll earn the watching or I'll earn your trust. Your choice, which, based on what I do." He held the gaze. "Thank you for hearing me out. Most men wouldn't have." Karstark grunted and sat down. It was not friendship. It would never be friendship. Karstark was too rigid, and Jon's desertion sat too wrong in him for that. But it was a kind of respect, the respect of a hard man for another man who'd faced a hard question honestly, instead of hiding behind a king's protection. After the council, Robb walked with Jon. "You didn't let me defend you," Robb said. "You couldn't have," Jon said. "If you'd defended me, it would have been the king protecting his brother, and every lord would have heard. The king bends the law for his blood. By making my own case, it was a man answering for himself. That's the difference between you sheltering a deserter and a deserter earning his place." He held Robb's gaze. "I've been thinking about how to be here without costing you. That's the answer. I make my own case. I earn my own place. I never make them feel like you're protecting me at the law's expense." Robb looked at his brother. "Mother said to manage it," Robb said. "The deserter thing, you're managing it better than I would have." "Mother's usually right," Jon said. "I've decided to stop being surprised by it." Jaime what the prisoner saw, 298 AC. Jon drew the duty of guarding Jaime Lannister. It was, he understood, a specific kind of assignment. The deserter given the prisoner, two men outside the normal order of things, the king in the north solving two problems by putting them in proximity. Jon didn't mind. The guard duty was quiet, and the prisoner was interesting in the specific, dangerous way that the most charming people were interesting. Jaime Lannister, chained in a tent, looked at Jon's black clothes and laughed. "They've got a crow guarding me," Jaime said. "Did you fly south, Crow? Aren't you supposed to be up on your wall watching the snowfall?" "I left," Jon said. "You left?" Jaime looked at him with the specific Jaime attention, the assessment under the mockery. "A deserter. They hang deserters, you know, or behead them. Your honorable father was very fond of beheading deserters. I heard he did one the very day you found those wolves." He smiled. "And now here's his bastard, a deserter himself, guarding me. The gods do have a sense of humor." Jon said nothing. "Nothing?" Jaime said. "No defense of your honor? No speech about brotherhood and duty?" "You're trying to make me angry," Jon said. "So I'll say something that tells you something. I'm not going to." Jaime looked at him. "You're smarter than you look," Jaime said. "Most of the Stark men are exactly as clever as they appear, which is to say, not very. The boy king, Robb, he's the exception. And you, apparently." He shifted in his chains. "Why'd you leave the wall, deserter? The real reason, not the noble version." "My father was dead and my brother was at war." "That's the noble version. It's also the real version." Jon held his gaze. "They're the same thing in this case. I left because my family needed me and the wall didn't, and the vow I took said the opposite, and I decided the vow was wrong." He held the gaze. "You killed a king you were sworn to protect. You decided the vow was wrong. We're not so different, you and I." Jaime's face changed. It was a small change, the specific Jaime change when something landed that he hadn't expected. But Jon saw it. "I killed Aerys because he was going to burn the city," Jaime said. "500,000 people. Wildfire under the whole of King's Landing. He'd have done it. Burn them all," he said. "So I killed him." His voice had lost the mockery. "And your father walked in and saw me on the throne and decided I was a man without honor and never once asked why. 16 years of that name, Kingslayer, and not one of them ever asked." Jon looked at him. "What was the wildfire?" Jon said. Jaime told him. It took a while. Jon listened. And by the end of it, Jon understood something that he would carry through the rest of the war, which was that the songs and the names and the stories that the world told about people were not the people. That Jaime Lannister had done the most dishonorable thing in the realm's memory for the most honorable reason imaginable, and had been hated for it for 16 years. And that the same world that called Jaime a Kingslayer would call Jon a deserter. And both names were true, and both names were lies. "Why are you telling me this?" Jon said. "Because you're a deserter guarding a Kingslayer and you didn't gloat," Jaime said. "Do you know how rare that is? In 16 years, you're the first person who heard Kingslayer and didn't already know exactly what it meant." He leaned back against the tent pole. "And because I'm bored and chained, and you're the only interesting thing in this camp who isn't trying to use me for something." He looked at Jon. "Your brother's going to lose, you know? Eventually. My father doesn't lose. He's lost battles before, and he's never lost a war. Your brother's brilliant, and he's going to lose because brilliance isn't enough against my father's patience." "Maybe," Jon said. "Definitely." Jaime closed his eyes. "Enjoy the winning while it lasts, deserter. It doesn't last." Jon stood guard in the dark. He thought, he might be right. He thought, "I left the wall to be here for the losing as much as the winning." He thought, "That's what family is. You're there for both." The night before, what brothers say, 298 A.C. The night before they marched on the Lannister rearguard at the Golden Tooth approach, Jon and Robb sat up late in the command tent with a flagon of wine between them and the specific quiet of two people who had run out of things they needed to say and were now saying the things they wanted to. "Do you remember," Robb said, "the snowball fight? The winter we were 8? When you and I held the broken tower against Theon and the Castle Boys, and we didn't let them take it for a whole afternoon?" "I remember you taking all the credit," Jon said. "I was the commander. You were 8, and you hid behind the wall and threw snowballs while I held the gap. That's called command, Jon. You delegate the gap holding. Robb grinned, the specific Robb grin, the one that had survived the war so far, that Jon kept waiting to see disappear, and that kept not disappearing. We were good together. Even then. You held, and I commanded, and Theon never took the tower. Jon drank. We were happy, Jon said. I didn't know it then. You don't, when you're 8. But we were. Winterfell, father alive. The whole family. The worst thing in my life was being a bastard, and even that wasn't. Father made it not the worst thing. He made me feel like a son even when the world said I wasn't. He looked at the wine. I'd give anything to go back to the broken tower. 8 years old, holding the gap, not knowing what was coming. Robb was quiet. We can't go back, Robb said. But we can, Jon. When this is over, when we've won and the girls are home and the North is free. We rebuild it. Not the same, you can't make the same thing twice. But something, a Winterfell with the family in it. You with a name and a keep. Me with, he gestured vaguely, whatever I end up with. We make a new version of the thing we had. You really believe in the after, Jon said. I have to. I know. You keep saying that. Jon looked at his brother. I worry about you, Robb, the way you carry the after. You're holding this whole war on the belief that there's a good ending waiting, and if there isn't, if it doesn't end the way you need it to, then I'll deal with that when it comes. Robb held his gaze. But I'm not going to fight a war believing I'll lose. That's not. You don't win that way. You win by believing in the after so hard that you make the men around you believe it too. That's what Father never understood. Father did the right thing, because it was right, and let the ending fall where it fell. I do the right thing, and fight like hell for the ending I want. That's the difference between us. That's why he's dead, and I'm going to live. Jon looked at his brother. He wanted to believe it. He wanted to believe that Robb's fierce certainty was enough, that wanting the after badly enough made the after come. But the wall had taught Jon the other thing, that wanting didn't matter to the cold, that the dead didn't care how hard you believed, that the world broke the people who assumed it wouldn't. He didn't say that. To the broken tower, Jon said instead, raising his cup. To the broken tower, Robb drank, and to holding the gap. You always were better at the gap than me. You always were better at making people want to hold it. They drank. The next day, they fought the Lannister rearguard at the Golden Tooth approach, and it was a hard fight, harder than the Whispering Wood. The Lannister men dug in and fighting from prepared positions, and Jon held a gap in the line for the better part of an hour with Ghost beside him and Longclaw in his hand, and the specific grim focus that had become the thing he was in battle. He took a wound, a spear that got through his guard and opened his side, not deep but bleeding. The specific kind of wound that would have killed him slowly if the maester hadn't been good. Robb found him after, being stitched. You held the gap, Robb said. Somebody had to. Jon winced as the needle went in. I'm better at the gap. You said so yourself. I'm going to stop putting you in the gap. You keep getting hurt in the gap. You put me in the gap because I'm good at it. Don't get sentimental and make me worse at my one job. Jon held his brother's gaze. I'm fine. It's a scratch. I've had worse from the practice yard. You haven't. I have. Sir Alliser at the wall once put a training sword through mine. Jon stopped, hissed, as the needle pulled. It doesn't matter. I'm fine. We won. Did we win? We won. Robb sat beside him while the Maester worked. We won. And you held the gap. And you're going to have a scar. And Mother's going to be furious that I let you fight in the line. Don't tell Mother. Mother knows everything. She'll know before we break camp. Robb watched the Maester work. Jon, thank you. For the gap. For all of it. For being here. He held his brother's gaze. I don't say it enough. There's never time. But thank you. Having you here, it's the difference. Not just the sword. Having someone who knew me before all this. Someone I don't have to be the king for. He held the gaze. Everyone else needs me to be the king. You just need me to be your brother. You don't know what that's worth. Jon held his brother's gaze. I do, actually, Jon said. It's the only reason I crossed a war. So that one person in the world still needed me to just be their brother. They sat together while the Maester finished the stitching. 2 brothers. One a king. One a deserter. Both a long way from the broken tower and the snowball fight. and the winter they were 8, and both holding the memory of it like the warmest thing they owned. The Crown. What the Lords Did. 298 AD. They crowned Robb king in the north after the Whispering Wood. Jon was there. He stood at the edge of the hall at Riverrun. They had come to Riverrun after the battle, to Catelyn's childhood home, to old Lord Hoster Tully, dying in his bed, and the specific gathering of the River Lords and the Northern Lords into a single cause. Jon stood at the edge and watched the Great Jon rise and put his sword at Robb's feet and call him the King in the North, the King who lost the wall. No, the King in the North, the old title, the title that hadn't been spoken since Torrhen Stark bent the knee to Aegon the Conqueror 300 years before. The hall took it up. The Northern Lords and the River Lords, the swords coming out, the voices. The King in the North, the King in the North. Jon watched his brother become a king. He felt the specific thing that he always felt, watching Robb step into the next larger version of himself, which was love and pride, and the small private ache of the bastard who would never step into anything, who stood at the edge of halls while his brother stood at the center of them. It was not resentment. He had made his peace with the distance long ago. But the ache was real, and it was honest, and he let himself feel it, because pretending not to feel it was its own kind of lie. After, Robb found him at the edge of the hall. "You're brooding," Robb said. "I'm watching." "You're brooding while watching. It's a specific thing you do." Robb stood beside him. The crown. There was no crown yet. They were having one made. The bronze and iron circlet of the old kings of winter. But the kingship was on him already, in the way the men in the hall oriented toward him. "Tell me what you're thinking." "I'm thinking you're a king now," Jon said. "And I'm a deserter, standing at the edge of your hall. And that's the right arrangement. That's how it should be." "That's not how it should be. It's how it is." "Robb," Jon held his gaze, "you're the king. I'm the bastard brother who broke his vows. The distance between those things is real, and pretending it isn't real doesn't help either of us. I'm not unhappy about it. I'm just clear about it." Robb looked at him. "When this is over," Robb said, "when we've won, when the girls are home and the Lannisters are dealt with, and the North is free." He held Jon's gaze. "I'm going to make you a Stark. Legitimize you. A king can do that. I asked Father once, years ago, whether a lord could, and he said only a king could. And now I'm a king." He held the gaze. "Jon Stark, brother to the king, with a keep of your own and lands and a name that isn't Snow." Jon was quiet. "That's a kind thing to offer," Jon said. "It's not kindness, it's ode. You're my brother, and you crossed the country through deserter hunters to fight for me. And you're going to be Jon Stark before I'm done." "The Watch," Jon said. "I'm a deserter, Robb. Legitimizing me doesn't undo that. There's a sentence on my head no matter what name I carry." Robb's face. The specific Robb face when he encountered a problem he couldn't immediately solve. "We'll deal with the Watch," Robb said. "When the war's over, I'll negotiate with them. The Watch needs the North's support. They can't refuse a king who keeps them fed and manned. I'll get you a pardon." "There's no pardon for desertion. The law's the law." Even Mormont said, "I'm the king in the North now," Robb said. "The Watch is in the North. We'll find a way." He held Jon's gaze with the specific Robb certainty that was sometimes warranted and sometimes wasn't. And that was right now, the thing Jon needed to hear, even if neither of them quite believed it. "I didn't get you back to lose you to a vow you broke for me. We'll find a way." Jon looked at his brother, the king. "All right," he said. He didn't believe it, but he let Robb believe it, because the believing was a gift Robb was giving him, and refusing a gift was its own kind of cruelty. The Wall sends a letter, 299 AC. The letter from the Wall came in the spring. It was from Sam. Jon knew the hand before he broke the seal. The specific, careful script of a boy who'd been taught letters properly, and who formed each one like it mattered, which to Sam it did. He read it in the camp at dusk, and Ghost lay against his leg, and the letter said things that Jon had been afraid of, without knowing he'd been afraid. Jon, I hope this reaches you. Pip says I'm a fool for sending it, and he's probably right, but I had to try. Things are bad here. The Rangings are finding things. You remember what we talked about, the cold, the things in the dark. It's real, Jon. We've seen. I can't write it. The Lord Commander is taking the whole watch beyond the wall. A great Ranging. Hundreds of us, north of the wall, to find out what's happening. I'm going. I don't want to, but I'm going. I'm not writing to ask you to come back. I know you can't. I know what they'd do. I'm writing because I wanted you to know. In case the Ranging goes badly. I wanted someone out there to know that we went north to face it, and that it was real, and that we weren't cowards. You're the only one I trust to remember us right. Ghost should be with you. Tell him I said goodbye. He never liked me, but I liked him. Your brother, and I mean it the way the watch means it, even though you left, because some vows are about who you are and not where you stand. Sam. Jon read it 3 times. He sat in the camp with the letter and the dusk and the specific, terrible understanding that the thing he'd told himself when he left, that the wall didn't need him, that the real war was Robb's war, might have been a lie. The watch was going north. Into the thing that Jon had felt building when he was there, the cold that was wrong, the dark that moved. Sam was going north. Sam, who couldn't fight, who'd come to the wall because his father wanted him gone, who was the gentlest person Jon had ever known. Sam was going north, and Jon was here. Robb found him with the letter. "What is it?" Robb said. Jon handed it to him. Robb read it. His face changed as he read, the specific change of a man encountering information that complicated everything. "The dead," Robb said. "The thing you told me about. When you first came, you said there was something real north of the wall. There is. And the whole watch is going to face it. With how many men? You said the watch was undermanned. 1,000, maybe. Less. Against..." Jon stopped. "Against I don't know what. Numbers I can't guess. Sam wouldn't write like that if it was nothing." Robb sat down. "Jon," Robb said carefully, "if what's north of the wall is real, if it's what you've been telling me, then that's the war that matters. More than mine. More than the throne." He held Jon's gaze. "And you left it. To come here. I know. Do you regret it?" Jon looked at the letter in Robb's hands. "I don't know," Jon said. It was the honest answer, and it cost him to give it. "When I left, I told myself the wall didn't need me. That the real war was here. That father was dead and you were marching. And that was what mattered." He held Robb's gaze. "And now Sam's going north into the dark, and I'm here. And I don't know if I made the right choice. I don't know if there is a right choice. I chose family. Maybe that was selfish. Maybe the realm needed me on that wall more than you needed me here. You can't be in 2 places." "No, I can't." Jon held the gaze. "That's the thing nobody tells you about choices. You don't get to find out what the other one would have been. You just live with the one you made and never know." Robb was quiet. "When the war's over," Robb said, "when we've won, I'll send men north. To the wall. Whatever they need. If the dead are real, if it's what you and Sam believe, then the North will answer it, with the whole strength of the North behind it." He held Jon's gaze. "You didn't abandon that fight forever. You delayed it. And when the time comes, you'll lead the North's part of it. I'll make sure of that." Jon looked at his brother. "That's a lot of promises, Robb," Jon said. "The pardon. The legitimization. The North marching to the wall. You keep making me promises about after the war, because there's going to be an after the war," Robb said. "And I'm going to be in it, and so are you, and we're going to put this family back together." He held Jon's gaze with the specific fierce certainty that was the thing that made men follow him. "I have to believe that. If I don't believe that, what am I fighting for?" Jon held his brother's gaze. He thought, that's the difference between us. Robb believes in the after. I've stopped being able to. He didn't say it. "All right," Jon said. After the war. Bran. What the boy saw. 299 AC. At Winterfell, Bran Stark dreamed of his brother. He had been dreaming strange things since the fall, since Jaime Lannister threw him from the tower, and he woke with broken legs and a head full of green, and a wolf he could climb inside when he slept. He didn't understand the dreams. No one did. Maester Luwin called them grief and shock and the mind's way of managing a broken body. But the dreams were not grief. The dreams were something else. Something that Bran was only beginning to have words for. The specific sense of seeing through eyes that weren't his own. He dreamed of Jon at the wall before he knew Jon had left it. He dreamed of Jon on a road in the dark, with Ghost beside him, riding south. He dreamed of Jon in a tent with Robb. He dreamed of a great cold thing in the north, beyond the wall. A darkness with blue eyes that was waking up, slowly, the way something enormous wakes. And he dreamed that Jon was supposed to be there to meet it and wasn't. And the wrongness of Jon not being where he was supposed to be was a thing Bran felt in his sleep without understanding it. He told Maester Luwin about the dreams. I dreamed Jon left the wall, Bran said, before the raven came. I dreamed it. And then the raven came and said it was true. Coincidence, Luwin said. But he said it the way people said things they were trying to make true by saying them. I dreamed about the thing in the north, Bran said. The cold thing, with the blue eyes. He looked at the Maester. It's waking up, and Jon's supposed to be there, and he's not. Luwin had no answer for that. Bran was the one who understood before anyone said it, that the story wasn't over. That winning the war in the south would only ever be a delay, not an ending. That the thing in the north was still waking, still coming. And that all the victories and the battles and the homecomings to come were the calm before a different kind of storm. He would tell Jon later, when Jon finally came home. And when Jon did come home at last, after the war and the peace and the long road north, Bran told him plainly. The two of them in Bran's room, the boy who couldn't walk, and the brother who'd crossed a war and come back. You're supposed to fight the cold thing, Bran said. I dreamed it. You're supposed to be at the wall when it comes. Not now, later. But you're supposed to be there. Jon looked at his little brother. He had heard about Bran's dreams. He had not known what to make of them. But sitting with Bran now, hearing the boy say the thing that Jon had felt in his own bones since Sam's letter, that the real war was still coming, that the wall was where it would be fought, that Jon's leaving had been a delay and not an escape. Jon felt the specific chill of a thing being confirmed by a source it shouldn't have been able to come from. How do you know that? Jon asked. I see things, Bran said simply. In dreams. Through the wolf, sometimes. Through other things. I don't understand it yet. But I see things. And I saw you at the wall, fighting the cold. And it wasn't now. It was later. But it was real. He held Jon's gaze with the specific, unsettling directness that the fall had given him. You didn't run from it, Jon. When you left the wall, everyone thinks you ran from it. But I saw you're going to be there for it. The leaving was just so you could come back stronger, with the whole north behind you. Jon looked at his brother. I hope you're right, Jon said. I've been carrying the leaving like a betrayal. Like I abandoned the real fight to save Robb. You didn't abandon it, Bran said. You're going to win it. I saw. He paused and something passed over his small face, the specific shadow of a boy seeing more than a boy should. But not everyone makes it. I can't see who. Just not everyone. The cold takes some of us before it's done. He looked at Jon. Be ready. When it comes. Be ready and bring everyone you can. Jon held his brother's gaze. He did not know what to make of Bran. No one did. The boy had fallen from a tower and come back changed, seeing things, knowing things. The specific, eerie knowledge that made the masters uneasy and the small folk whisper. But Jon had been to the wall. Jon had felt the cold that was wrong. Jon had read Sam's letter and knew that the dead were real. And if the dead were real, then maybe Bran's dreams were real too. And maybe the boy who couldn't walk could see the shape of the war that was still coming. "I'll be ready," Jon said. "I promise. When the cold comes, I'll be at the wall, with everyone I can bring. I won't run from it again." "You never ran from it," Bran said. "That's what I'm telling you. You went to get help first. There's a difference." Jon held his little brother and thought, out of the mouths of broken children. Maybe the boy sees true. Maybe the leaving really was a delay and not a desertion of the thing that mattered. He let himself believe it. It was the first time since Sam's letter that he let himself believe it. Ox Cross, what the war became. 299 AC, the war went well, and the going well was its own kind of trap. Ox Cross was another victory. Robb's cavalry finding the Lannister camp in the night, hitting it before it knew it was being hit. The specific Robb genius for the night attack and the broken ground. Jon fought at Ox Cross, and Jon killed at Ox Cross, and Jon watched Robb win again, the third great victory, the war record that was becoming the stuff of songs even as it was happening. But Jaime had been right. Tywin Lannister did not lose wars. He lost battles, he'd lost 3 now, to a boy of 17. And the losing must have been a specific humiliation for the most feared man in the realm. But losing battles and losing wars were different, and Tywin had been doing the thing that Tywin did, which was the patient strategic accumulation of advantage while the brilliant young enemy won battles that didn't end the war. The Lannisters made an alliance with the Tyrells. Jon heard about it in a war council, the specific cold news that arrived by Raven, that Tywin Lannister had married the crown to the wealth and the swords of Highgarden, that the Reach had committed to the Lannister cause, that the 80,000 swords of the most fertile region in Westeros were now against them. 80,000, Lord Glover said, the number sitting in the tent like a weight. "More," the Great Jon said. "The Reach can field 100,000 if they bleed themselves for it." "They won't bleed themselves," Robb said. He was at the map, the specific Robb posture over the map that Jon had watched for a year now, the king reading the ground. "But they don't need to. We can't match the Reach and the Westerlands and the Crownlands combined. We never could. We were winning because we were faster and smarter, and they were divided." He looked up. "They're not divided anymore." The tent was quiet. "What do we do?" Lord Stark said. Robb looked at the map. Jon watched his brother look at the map, and he saw for the first time the specific thing that he'd been afraid of seeing since he arrived. He saw Robb not have an answer. The brilliant commander who always had the plan, who always saw the move, looking at a map that didn't have a move on it that led to winning. "We hold the North," Robb said slowly. "We hold what we've taken. We make the war so expensive for them that they offer terms. We can't beat the Reach and the Westerlands in the field, but we can make taking the North cost more than the North is worth." He looked at his lords. "That's not winning the way we've been winning. That's a different kind of war, a longer one." "The men won't like a long war," the Great Jon said. "They've got crops to plant. Winter's coming. They followed you because you won fast. You start losing, or even just stop winning, and they start thinking about home." "I know," Robb said. It was, Jon thought, the moment the war changed. Not Oxcross, which was a victory. This, the council after the news of the Tyrell alliance, the moment when winning stopped being the question and surviving started being it. After the council, Jon stayed. "Jaime was right," Jon said. "About what?" "He said you'd lose. Eventually. He said Tywin doesn't lose wars, only battles, and that your brilliance wouldn't be enough against his patience." Jon held Robb's gaze. "He said it the night I guarded him. I didn't believe him." "Do you believe him now?" "I believe the arithmetic changed," Jon said. 80,000 Tyrell swords. We can't match that. You said it yourself." Robb looked at the map. "Then we change the war," Robb said. "We don't try to take King's Landing. We consolidate the north and the Riverlands. We hold. We make them come to us on our ground in our winter. We make the cost of conquering us higher than the prize. He looked at Jon. It's not the war I wanted to fight, but it's the war I can win, or at least not lose. Jon looked at his brother. That's wise, Jon said. It's desperate. Wise and desperate are usually the same thing. By the time you need to be wise, you're usually already desperate. Jon held the gaze. Father used to say something like that. Father said a lot of wise things and died anyway. He did. Jon held the gaze. Be wiser than father. Wise enough to be alive at the end of it. That's the only kind of wisdom worth having. Robb looked at the map for a long time. The Frees, he said. What about them? I need the twins. The crossing. If I'm going to consolidate the Riverlands and the north into a single defensible position, I need to be able to move armies across the Trident, and the twins is the crossing. He looked at Jon. Walder Frey holds the twins, and Walder Frey was promised something for his support, back at the start. A marriage. One of his daughters, or granddaughters, to me. And Robb was quiet. And I need to pay it, Robb said. If I want the Freys to hold for a long war, I need to give Walder Frey what he was promised, which means marrying a Frey. He looked at the map. Which I will do. It's the kind of thing kings do, the kind of thing that isn't about what you want. Jon looked at his brother. He thought, there it is, the first of the prices. The marriage you don't want, to a house you don't respect, because the war requires it. You'll do it well, Jon said. Whatever you decide, you'll do it well. I'll do it because I have to, Robb said. Doing it well is a luxury I'm not sure I have. The Frey marriage, what Jon counseled. 299 AC, Robb married a Frey. He did it without falling in love with anyone else first, which was the thing that had nearly destroyed everything in another version of events that none of them would ever know about. A version where a young king met a foreign healer and his heart overruled his crown, and the breaking of the Frey promise became the thing that ended him. In this version, Jon was there, and Jon had watched their father die for honor. And Jon said the thing that kept Robb from the cliff before Robb reached it. It happened in the War Council tent, in the spring, when the question of the Frey marriage was real and pressing, and Robb was looking for a way around it. I could marry one of the River Lord's daughters instead, Robb said. Strengthen a different alliance. The Freys are, nobody trusts the Freys. Marrying into them makes me look weak. It makes you look like a king who keeps his word, Jon said. Robb looked at him. You promised Walder Frey a marriage in exchange for the crossing, Jon said. He gave you the crossing. The crossing let you win the Whispering Wood. The debt is real, and it's owed. And the whole North watched our father die because he was a man who kept his word. Jon held his gaze. If you break the Frey promise, if you find a way around it because the Freys are unpleasant and the marriage is beneath you, then you're a king whose word is worth nothing when keeping it becomes inconvenient. And your mother already told you what that does to the oaths your bannermen swore to you. Robb was quiet. You sound like Mother, Robb said. Mother's right about this. She was right about me being a problem, and she's right about this. Jon held the gaze. Marry the Frey. Marry her with full honors, in front of everyone, like it's the alliance you wanted, instead of the one you're settling for. Make Walder Frey feel like he won something. It cost you nothing to let an old man feel important, and it buys you the crossing and the loyalty for the whole war. Robb looked at the map. I wanted to marry for... He stopped. I don't know. Something. Someone I chose. Kings don't get to choose, Jon said. That's the price of the crown. You told me that yourself, about the Frey thing. It's not about what you want. He held the gaze. You get the North. You get the war. You get to be the king who lost the wall, made back into the king in the North. You don't get to also marry for love. Nobody gets all of it. You're very hard about this. I'm a bastard who deserted the Watch and killed men on the road to get to you, Jon said. I gave up everything I had to be here. I'm not going to watch you give up the war for a marriage you could have managed." He held the gaze. "Marry the Frey, Robb. Keep your word. Win the war. Mourn the marriage you wanted in private, where it doesn't cost anyone anything." Robb married Roslyn Frey at the Twins. It was not the Red Wedding. There was no Red Wedding, because Robb had kept his word, because the debt was paid, because Walder Frey, who was a bitter and grasping old man but not a traitor when his pride was satisfied, had no grievance to nurse and no betrayal to avenge. The marriage was a marriage. The crossing was secured. The Freys held. Roslyn was sweet and frightened and 17, and Robb was kind to her in the specific way that Robb was kind to everyone. And whether it became love, Jon never knew, but it became something. A working marriage. A partnership. The specific thing that royal marriages became when both people decided to make them work. Jon stood at the edge of the wedding hall and watched his brother do the hard, correct thing. Catelyn found him there. "You counseled him to marry the Frey girl," she said. "I did." "Why?" Jon looked at her. The specific Catelyn assessment. The cold middle distance that he'd lived in his whole life. "Because father died for honor, and I didn't want Robb to die for the lack of it," Jon said. "Because the Freys are dangerous when they're insulted and harmless when they're satisfied, and satisfying them costs nothing but Robb's pride." He held her gaze. "Because he's all the family I have left that I can protect, and protecting him means making him keep his word, even when he doesn't want to." Catelyn looked at him for a long moment. "That was good counsel," she said. It cost her something to say it. He could see the cost. "You gave my son good counsel, and it may have saved his life, and I don't." She stopped. "I have spent 15 years being cold to you. I'm not going to pretend that I wasn't, or that it was right, or that I've stopped." She held his gaze. "But that was good counsel. And you fought for him. And you crossed the country to be here. And Ned," her voice caught on the name, "Ned loved you. I could never understand why he loved a bastard the way he loved his true-born children. Now I think maybe he knew something about you that I refused to see." Jon was very still. "I'm not asking you to love me," Jon said. The same thing Robb had said to her, the words arriving in Jon's mouth without his planning them. "I never have. I just wanted to be useful to this family. That's all I ever wanted." Catelyn looked at him. "You've been useful," she said. "More than useful. You've been..." She stopped again. "Ned's son. You've been Ned's son. In every way that matters." It wasn't love. It was not forgiveness, exactly. But it was the closest the two of them had ever come. And it was real. And Jon would carry it for the rest of his life. The moment Catelyn Stark looked at him at the Twins and called him Ned's son and meant it as the highest thing she had to give. She left. Jon stood at the edge of the wedding hall. Ghost came and sat beside him. He thought, "This is what I came for. Not the battles. This. Being here. Being part of it. Being someone this family could lean on." He thought, "I'd desert 100 walls for this." He thought in the part of him that never quite stopped. "I hope Sam came back from the ranging. I hope the wall is holding. I hope the choice I made wasn't a betrayal of everyone north of it." He didn't know. He would not know for a long time. The Iron Islands, what the hedge saved. 299 AC. Occam. Theon Greyjoy chose his father. It happened the way Jon had feared it would happen. Balon Greyjoy put his son in a hall and made him choose. And 10 years of being raised a Stark weighed less than the specific hunger of a son for a father's approval. And Theon chose the blood over the bond. He took his father's side. He agreed to lead a raid on the North's coast while the North's armies were in the south. But Robb had sent the second envoy. Robert Glover had been in the Iron Islands with separate authority, and Robert Glover had watched Balon Greyjoy receive his son with contempt rather than warmth, had seen the way the old Reaver looked at the boy who'd been raised by his enemies, and had sent a fast raven back to Robb the moment the negotiations soured. The Greyjoys will not ally. Balon means to raid the north while we're south. Greyjoy's son has gone over to his father. Defend the coast. The warning came 3 weeks before the raids. 3 weeks was enough. Robb pulled men back. Not many. He couldn't spare many, but enough. He sent word to the northern coastal holdings to prepare. He moved the specific small force that the warning made possible into position. And when Theon Greyjoy led his raid against the north, against Deepwood Motte and the Stony Shore, the holdings were not undefended. Theon did not take Winterfell. In the version of events that never happened, Theon Greyjoy took Winterfell while it sat nearly empty, held it briefly, and then lost it in a catastrophe that ended with the castle burned, and Bran and Rickon believed dead, and the heart of the north a ruin. In this version, Robert Glover's warning had reached Robb, and Robb had sent Sir Roderick Castle north with enough men to hold the key castles. And when Theon came for Winterfell, he found it garrisoned and warned and waiting. He failed. He failed, and he was taken. And the specific tragedy of Theon Greyjoy played out not as a betrayal that destroyed the north, but as a smaller, sadder thing. A young man who'd chosen wrong, who'd been captured trying to prove himself to a father who didn't want him, who ended the war in a cell at Winterfell awaiting the king in the north's justice. Jon heard about it at Riverlands. He chose Balon, Robb said. He had the letter from the north in his hand, the specific weight of it. He led the raid. He came for Winterfell. He looked at Jon. You were right. You saw it. You told me to send the second envoy, and the second envoy is the only reason Winterfell still stands and Bran and Rickon are alive. Jon was quiet. I didn't want to be right, Jon said. I liked Theon in the complicated way you like someone you grew up resenting. I didn't want him to be the man who'd do this. He's in a cell at Winterfell, awaiting my justice. Robb's voice was hard. He betrayed us, Jon. He came for our brothers. For Bran and Rickon. If your warning hadn't, I know. What do I do with him? Jon looked at his brother. That's a king's decision, Jon said. Not a brother's. And I'm not going to pretend I'm objective about Theon, because I'm not. He came for our family. He held Robb's gaze. But I'll tell you what I think, since you asked. He's a traitor, and traitors die. That's the law, and the law's the law, and I'm the last person who should argue against holding people to their oaths. He paused. But he's also a man who was given away as a child, and raised by the family that took him, and then asked to choose between them and the blood that abandoned him. And he chose wrong. And choosing wrong isn't the same as being evil. He held the gaze. Do justice. He earned justice. But do it knowing he was a broken thing before he was a traitor. That won't change what you do. It should change how you carry it. Robb looked at the letter. You're better at this than I am, Robb said. The seeing of people. The understanding of why they break. The wall, Jon said. It's full of broken men, murderers, rapers, thieves, the dregs of the realm. You spend enough time with broken men, and you learn that almost no one starts broken. Something breaks them. Understanding the something doesn't excuse what they do, but it helps you do justice without becoming cruel. He held the gaze. That's the lesson of the wall I actually kept, even after I deserted it. Robb did justice on Theon Greyjoy. He did it himself, with his own sword, in the Godswood at Winterfell when the war was over. The specific northern way. The lord who passes, the sentence swings the sword. The thing Ned had taught both his sons. He did it cleanly, and he did it without cruelty, and he carried it afterward the way Jon had told him to, as a heavy thing rather than a satisfying one. But that was later. For now the warning had held. Winterfell stood. Bran and Rickon were alive. And the small hedge that Jon's dark way of thinking had produced, the second envoy, the thread no one thought they'd need, had saved the heart of the north from a catastrophe that would have hollowed it out from within while its armies won battles in the south. It was, Robb said later, the most important piece of counsel Jon ever gave him. Not a battle, not a sword. A warning about the way a broken man might break. Sansa. What she endured. 299 AC. In King's Landing, Sansa Stark survived. She was a hostage in everything but name, the betrothed of King Joffrey, kept at court as the specific guarantee of the North's good behavior, which the North had not given, which meant Sansa paid for her brother's victories in the only currency available, which was her own body and her own fear. When Robb won at the Whispering Wood, Joffrey had her beaten. He did not do it himself. He had his Kingsguard do it, The specific cruelty of a boy who discovered that the men sworn to protect the realm could be turned into instruments of his spite. They beat her in the throne room in front of the court because her brother had won a battle 800 miles away. She survived it. She survived it the way she survived everything in King's Landing, which was by becoming smaller and quieter and harder to see, by giving Joffrey nothing he could use, by learning the specific skill that the court taught its victims, which was to be present without being a target. She learned to say the words that kept her alive. I'm loyal to King Joffrey. My brother is a traitor. I want only to be a good queen, and to mean none of them, and to keep the meaning buried so deep that even she sometimes lost track of where the performance ended. The Hound was the one who helped her, not kindly. Xandor Clegane did not do kindly, but he did the thing that no one else at court did, which was tell her the truth. They're all liars here, little bird. The only difference is whether they lie to your face or behind your back. And he stood between her and the worst of Joffrey's cruelties when he could, in the specific gruff way that he never explained and never softened. When the news came that Robb was winning, kept winning, battle after battle, Sansa learned to hide her hope. Hope was dangerous at court. Hope showed on your face, and your face was the thing they read. She kept her hope where she kept everything that mattered, which was buried, which was silent, which was hers. She thought about Jon sometimes. This surprised her. She had not been close to Jon, had been, if she was honest with herself, in the long nights, cool to him, distant in the way she'd learned from her mother without ever questioning it. But in King's Landing, surrounded by people who performed every word and meant none of them, she found herself thinking about her bastard half-brother who had never once performed anything, whose specific, stubborn honesty she had read as sullenness when she was a child, and that she now understood, too late, had been integrity. She thought, Jon never lied. In all the years I knew him, Jon never once lied to me. I didn't value it because I didn't know how rare it was. When the Raven came, secretly, through a channel the Hound arranged, that said Jon had left the wall and was fighting beside Robb, Sansa wept. She didn't fully understand why. She wept in the specific silent way she'd learned, the tears that made no sound because sound brought attention, and she held the knowledge to herself like a coal. Jon left the wall. Jon broke his vows. For us, for the family, the bastard brother she'd been cool to her whole life had given up everything to fight for the people who'd never fully claimed him. She thought, when I get home, if I get home, I'm going to do better by him than I did. She held that thought through the worst of it, through Joffrey's cruelties and the court's poison and the specific grinding fear of being a hostage in the den of the people who'd killed her father. She held it like the coal it was, warm, private, a promise to herself about the kind of person she would be if she survived. She survived. When Tyrion Lannister came to her chambers and told her she was going home, that the war was ending, that the terms were agreed, that she would be returned to her brother the king, she did not let herself believe it until the carriage was moving, until King's Landing was behind her, until the specific weight of 2 years lifted by slow degrees as the miles accumulated between her and the place that had tried to break her. It had not broken her. She had not let it. And when she came home and saw Jon in the courtyard at Riverrun, she did the thing she'd promised herself in the long nights. She crossed the courtyard and she held her brother and she called him brother. And she meant it with everything 2 years of King's Landing had left her, which was less than she'd had before and more than she'd ever spent on anyone. The Lannisters. What Tywin offered. 299 AC. Tywin Lannister offered terms in the autumn. This was the thing that the changed war produced, not a victory for either side, but the specific exhaustion that set in when one side couldn't be beaten and the other couldn't be conquered. Robb held the North and the Riverlands. He'd made the taking of them cost more than the Lannisters wanted to pay. The specific defensive war that Jon had watched him build, castle by castle, crossing by crossing, until the North was a fortress that the combined strength of the Reach and the Westerlands could batter but not break without bleeding white. Tywin's terms came by raven and then by envoy. The envoy was Tyrion Lannister. He came to Riverrun under a peace banner, the smallest Lannister, the one the songs mocked. And he sat across from Robb in the Great Hall with the specific Tyrion attention that catalogued everything and revealed nothing, and he laid out his father's terms. The North would be acknowledged as independent. The king in the North would be recognized, not loved, but recognized, the specific legal acknowledgement that ended the war without either side pretending to be happy about it. In exchange, Robb would release Jaime Lannister, recognize Joffrey as king of the other 6 kingdoms, and the borders would be drawn at the neck and the trident, Sansa and Arya. "My sisters," Robb said, "they come home. That's not negotiable. That's the first term, before any of the others." Tyrion was quiet for a moment. "Sansa is in King's Landing," Tyrion said. "She can be returned. I'll see to it personally. She's been..." He stopped. The specific Tyrion stop of a man choosing what truth to tell. "She has not been treated as well as I would have liked. I'll see her returned safely. You have my word, for whatever a Lannister's word is worth to you." "And Arya?" Tyrion's face changed. "Arya Stark," Tyrion said carefully, "disappeared from King's Landing the day your father was arrested. We don't have her. We've never had her. We don't know where she is." He held Robb's gaze. "I'm telling you the truth because a lie here would be discovered and would poison everything. We don't have your younger sister. I'm sorry. I wish I had better news." The hall was quiet. Jon watched Robb absorb it. The specific thing of getting one sister back and learning the other was simply gone, vanished, somewhere in the wreckage of the war, alive or dead, no one knowing. "Sansa comes home," Robb said, his voice tight. "And you keep looking for Arya. The Crown's resources, every effort. You find my sister." "I'll look," Tyrion said. "I can't promise to find, but I'll look. I have," he paused, "I have a certain fondness for your sister Arya, from the little I saw of her. She has more courage than most of the knights in my father's army. I'll look." The terms were negotiated over a week. Jon was present for some of it. Robb wanted him there, the specific trust of a king keeping his brother close during the hardest decisions. And in one of the sessions, Tyrion looked at Jon's black clothes and at Longclaw and understood. "A deserter," Tyrion said after a session when the lords had cleared and it was just the 3 of them. "You're the deserter brother, the one who left the wall." "I am," Jon said. "That's a death sentence, you know. The Watch doesn't forgive desertion." Tyrion poured himself wine. "I spent some time at the wall. Pissed off the edge of it, in fact. Magnificent structure. Terrible plumbing." He looked at Jon. "Why'd you leave?" "My father was dead. My brother was at war. And you chose your brother over your vow." Tyrion drank. "I understand that better than you'd think. Family is the thing they hang over you your whole life. Your duty, your blood, the debt you owe for being born. And then sometimes the family is the only thing worth anything, and the duty is just a wall between you and the people you love." He looked at Jon. "You made the human choice. The realm will call it the wrong one, but it was the human one." Jon looked at him. "You sound like a man who's made the same kind of choice," Jon said. "I'm a man who's never been given the chance," Tyrion said. "My family would never let me choose them. I've spent my life trying to earn a place at a table that was never going to have a chair for me." He finished the wine. "You had a brother who crossed a war to stand beside you, and a king who's going to legitimize you, and a dead father who loved you more than his true-born children. You don't know how rich you are, deserter, even with the death sentence. You're rich in the only thing that matters." He left. Jon sat with that. He thought, he's right. He thought, I gave up a wall and a vow, and I got a family. I'd make the trade again. He thought, I just hope the wall I gave up doesn't fall while I'm being rich. Arya, the one they couldn't find. 299 AC. Arya Stark was alive. and no one in her family knew it. She had escaped King's Landing the day her father was arrested, slipped out in the chaos, a child in the gutters of a city that had just turned on her house. And she had survived the way children survive when the alternative is death, which is to say, desperately, and by luck, and by becoming something harder than a child should have to become. She had cut her hair and worn boys' clothes, and answered to a boy's name, and joined a column of recruits bound for the wall. The specific irony of a Stark girl fleeing toward the same wall her bastard brother was fleeing away from, the two of them passing somewhere on the King's Road in opposite directions without ever knowing. She did not reach the wall. The war caught the recruit column, Lannister men, looking for someone, burning and killing the way the war taught men to burn and kill. And Arya ran again, and survived again, and ended up in the specific hell of Harrenhal as a captive servant, watching and waiting and learning the thing that the war was teaching her, which was a list of names and a cold, patient hatred and the specific skill of being no one in a place that wanted to make her nothing. She heard about Robb's victories. She heard about them the way captives heard things, in fragments, in whispers, the news passing through Harrenhal's servants like water through stone. The king in the north, the young wolf, her brother winning battles, marching, fighting for the family she'd been torn out of. She held the news like Sansa held her coal in King's Landing, buried, silent, hers. My brother is winning. My brother is coming. If I can just survive, if I can just get north, my brother will be there. She heard, eventually, that Jon had left the wall. This reached her as a rumor, garbled, half true. The Stark bastard had deserted the Watch and joined the young wolf's army. Arya, scrubbing floors in Harrenhal, had stopped at the words and felt something she hadn't felt in months, which was a fierce private joy. Jon. Of all of them, Jon had been the one who understood her, who'd given her needle, who'd called her little sister, and meant it, who'd never once treated her like she was supposed to be something other than what she was. Jon had left the wall to fight for the family. Of course he had. It was the most Jon thing she could imagine. She thought, if I can reach Robb's army, Jon will be there. Jon and Robb both. I just have to get north. I just have to survive long enough to get north. She survived. She escaped Harrenhal, the specific, desperate escape that the war made possible, chaos and fire and a stolen moment. And she ran north, toward her brothers, toward the army, toward the family that didn't know she was alive and was looking for her with the full resources of a kingdom and not finding her because she was a ghost in boys' clothes moving through a country at war. She did not reach them before the peace. By the time Arya Stark made it to the north, ragged, hardened, 11 years old and carrying a list of names and a sword called Needle and the specific 1,000-yard stillness of a child who had seen too much, the war was over. The peace was signed. And when she finally walked through the gates of Winterfell, alive, against every odd, the family that had spent 2 years believing her lost looked up and saw a ghost. But that was later. For now, during the war, Arya was the missing piece, the sister they couldn't find, the grief that sat under every victory. Robb won battles and signed treaties and got Sansa home, and the whole time there was an Arya-shaped hole in everything, the sister who'd vanished, alive or dead, no one knowing. Jon felt it worse than most. She's out there, Jon said to Robb one night, the missing sister between them like a wound. I know she is. Arya doesn't die easy. She's the toughest of all of us. She's out there somewhere, surviving, trying to get home. You don't know that. I know Arya. Jon held his brother's gaze. She's alive, and she's coming home. We just have to be here when she does. He held the gaze. That's the other reason I left the war, Robb. Not just you, all of you. So that when the family came back together, however it came back together, I'd be here for it. I'd be part of it, not 800 miles away, on a wall hearing about it in letters. He paused. I want to be here when Arya comes home. I will be here when Arya comes home. He was. When Arya finally came through the gates of Winterfell, a year after the war, more ghost than girl, it was Jon she ran to first. Jon, who caught her and lifted her and held her while she shook. Jon, who she thought about in Harrenhal's cells. Jon, who'd given her a needle and called her little sister and left a wall to be exactly where she needed him to be when she finally made it home. But that was later. For now she was missing, and the family grieved her, and Jon held on to the belief that she was alive the way Robb held on to the belief in the after, fiercely, against the evidence, because the believing was the only thing that made the not knowing survivable. Peace, the shape of what they won. 299 AC. The peace was signed at Riverrun in the autumn of 299. It was not a triumph. Robb had wanted at the start to take King's Landing, to avenge his father, to pull the Lannisters down, to put Joffrey's head where Joffrey had put Ned's. He did not get that. What he got was the North, independent, free, the old kingdom restored after 300 years. The kingdom of the North and the Trident ruled from Winterfell and Riverrun. The king in the North acknowledged by the Iron Throne as a sovereign. It was less than vengeance and more than survival. And it was the specific kind of peace that wars produced when both sides were too strong to lose and too weak to win. Sansa came home before the first snows. Jon was at Riverrun when she arrived. He watched the carriage come through the gates, and he watched his sister step down from it, and he barely recognized her, not because she'd changed in appearance, though she had, but because of the way she held herself. 12 years old when she'd ridden south. 14 now. And the 2 years had done something that 2 years shouldn't do to a child. Had put a watchfulness in her, a stillness. The specific, learned caution of someone who had survived a place that wanted to break her. She saw Robb first. She ran to him, and he caught her, and the two of them held each other, and the whole courtyard looked away to give them the moment. Then she saw Jon. She stopped. "Jon?" she said, like she couldn't believe it. You're supposed to be at the wall." "I left," Jon said, "to fight for Robb." Sansa looked at him. And then she did something that Jon had not expected, that he could not have predicted, that undid something in his chest that he hadn't known was knotted. She crossed the courtyard, and she put her arms around him. Sansa, who had been cool to him her whole childhood, who had taken her mother's distance and made it her own, who had never once in 14 years embraced her bastard half-brother. She held on to him like he was family. "I'm sorry," Sansa said into his shoulder. For how I was. I didn't understand anything before. I understand now." She held on. "You're my brother. You came to fight for us. You're my brother." Jon held his sister. "You're home," he said. "That's all that matters. You're home." The court watched the deserter and the princess and the king in the north in the courtyard at Riverrun. And whatever the deserter had been, in that moment he was something else. He was the brother who'd come home, the one who'd crossed a war, the Stark who wasn't a Stark and who was more Stark than anyone. Jon and Sansa, what the war taught them. 300 AC. Sansa found Jon in the Riverrun Godswood the night after she came home. It was small, the Riverrun Godswood, a southern thing without a proper heart tree. But it was quiet, and it was where Jon went when the noise of the camp became too much. The specific northern habit of seeking the old god's silence. Sansa came through the trees in the dark and found him sitting on a stone with Ghost at his feet, and she sat down beside him without asking, which was itself a change. The old Sansa would never have sat uninvited beside her bastard brother in the dark. "I couldn't sleep," she said. "The court does that," Jon said. "Takes a while to learn how to sleep again after. The wall was the same. You spend so long braced that the bracing becomes how you are. You have to learn to stop." He looked at her. "It comes back. The sleeping. Slowly." Sansa pulled her cloak around her. "I was horrible to you," she said. "When we were children. I was cold and I was dismissive. And I treated you like you were less because Mother treated you like you were less. And I never once questioned it." She held his gaze in the dark. "I'm sorry." I've wanted to say it since the courtyard. I'm sorry, Jon. You were always kind to me even when I wasn't kind to you, and I never noticed. Because I decided you didn't matter. Because that's what I was taught. Jon was quiet for a moment. You were a child, Jon said. Children believe what they're taught. I never blamed you for it. I blamed... He stopped. I didn't blame anyone, really. It was just how things were. The bastard ate at the side table. The trueborn children kept their distance. It was the shape of the world, and I learned to live inside the shape. He looked at her. You don't have to apologize for being a child in the world you were given. I want to, Sansa said, because I'm not a child anymore. And I can see it now. And seeing it and not saying anything would make me a coward. She held his gaze. King's Landing taught me what cruelty actually is. Real cruelty. Joffrey's kind. And once I'd seen that, I understood that the way I'd treated you wasn't that. It was never that. But it was a smaller version of the same thing. Deciding someone matters less. Treating them like a lesser thing. She held the gaze. I won't do it again. Not to you. Not to anyone. The war taught me that much. Jon looked at his sister. She had changed. The war had changed all of them. But Sansa's change was the one that surprised him most. The silly, romantic girl who dreamed of princes and songs had been burned down to something harder and clearer and kinder. The specific kindness that only came from having seen the alternative up close. You've grown up, Jon said. I'm sorry it took King's Landing to do it. I'm glad of what it made, even if I hate how it made it. That's the war, Sansa said. It takes things and it makes things, and you don't get to choose which. She looked at Ghost. Does he let people touch him? He decides, Jon said. Hold out your hand. Sansa held out her hand. Ghost looked at it. Then the direwolf rose and crossed the small distance and put his great white head under her hand. And Sansa stroked the wolf's fur with the specific wonder of someone touching something wild that had chosen to be touched. He's beautiful, Sansa said. He's the last quiet one, Jon said. Of the litter. The others were louder. Ghost never made a sound, even as a pup. I almost didn't find him. He was off on his own, away from the others. He watched the wolf accept his sister's hand. I've always thought we suited each other. The quiet one and the one who didn't quite belong. Sansa stroked the wolf. You belong now, she said. Whatever mother, whatever any of us made you feel, you belong. Robb's going to make you a Stark. And even if he didn't, you belong. You crossed a war to be here. That's belonging. That's the realest kind there is. She held his gaze. Welcome home, Jon. Truly, welcome home. They sat in the Godswood with the wolf between them, the brother and the sister, the deserter and the survivor. Two people the war had broken and reforged into something closer than they'd ever been when the world was whole. It was, Jon thought, worth a wall, worth a vow, worth everything the leaving had cost. This, right here, his sister's hand on his wolf and her voice in the dark saying welcome home and meaning it. Worth all of it. The watch, what Robb negotiated, 300 AC. The matter of Jon's desertion was not solved by the peace. It hung over everything. The specific fact that Jon Snow, brother to the king in the north, hero of the war, was a deserter from the Night's Watch with a death sentence on his head. The law was the law. Robb was a king now, but the Watch was older than kings, neutral in the wars of the realm, and the Watch's law did not bend for royalty. Robb went to the wall himself. This surprised everyone. A king did not travel to the edge of the world to negotiate the fate of one man. But Robb went in the early winter, with Jon beside him and a column of supply wagons behind them, food, steel, men, the specific tangible support that the Watch had been begging the realm for and that the realm had been ignoring for decades. They came to Castle Black, and Robb met with the Lord Commander. Not Mormont. Mormont was dead. The Great Ranging had gone north, and Mormont had led it. and the ranging had found what it was looking for, and the finding had cost the old bear his life, killed not by the dead, but by his own mutinous men at a place called Craster's Keep, the Watch turning on itself in the cold and the fear. The survivors had straggled back to the wall. There were not many. Sam was one of them. Jon found him in the common hall, thinner and older, and with something behind his eyes that hadn't been there before. The specific look of a man who had seen the thing in the dark and lived. They embraced, and neither of them spoke for a while. "You came back," Sam said. "Robb's negotiating with the Watch. About me, the desertion." Jon held his friend at arm's length, looking at him. "You went north, the ranging. You saw—" "I saw," Sam said. His voice was flat in the specific way of a man who had put a thing in a box because the box was the only way to carry it. "It's real, Jon. Everything we were afraid of. It's real, and it's coming. And the Watch is. There's almost nothing left of the Watch. Craster's Keep. The mutiny. We lost." He stopped. "We lost so many. Mormont. We lost Mormont." Jon held his friend. "I killed a White Walker," Sam said, quietly, like a confession, with dragonglass, north of the wall. "I didn't mean to. I was running, and it was there, and I had a dragonglass dagger, and It shattered. The Walker shattered like ice." He looked at Jon. "They can die. That's the thing I came back to tell anyone who'd listen. Dragonglass kills them. They can die. We can fight them." Jon looked at his friend, at Sam, the gentle one, the one who'd come to the wall because his father wanted him gone, who had gone north into the dark and killed one of the others and come back to tell the tale. "You're the bravest man I know," Jon said. "I'm the most frightened man you know," Sam said. "I just kept going anyway. I've decided that's what brave actually is. Not the not being afraid, the going anyway." Robb's negotiation took 3 days. In the end, it was not a pardon. There was no pardon for desertion. The Lord Commander was firm on that. The law could not be unmade. It was something else. A trade. Robb offered the Watch what it desperately needed. 1,000 men from the north, supplies for 10 years, the specific lifeline that would let the Watch face what was coming. And in exchange, the Watch released Jon Snow from his vows. Not pardoned. Released, the vows dissolved by the authority of the Lord Commander, on the grounds that the man had been a boy of 17, who'd left to bury his murdered father and fight beside his brother, and that the Watch in its current desperate state had more need of 1,000 living northern swords than of one deserter's head. It was a legal fiction. Everyone knew it was a legal fiction, but it held, because both sides needed it to hold, because the king in the north needed his brother free, and the Watch needed the north's strength, and the dissolving of one man's vows was a small price for both. Before the negotiation concluded, Sam took Jon up onto the wall. It was Jon's first time on top of it since the night he'd left, the enormous flat top of the wall. 700 feet of ice, the wind that never stopped, the view north that went on forever into the haunted lands. The two friends stood at the edge and looked north, and neither of them spoke for a while. "It's out there," Sam said finally. "The thing we're afraid of. Everything we're afraid of. I went out there, Jon, past the edge of the world. And it's real, and it's worse than the stories, and there's almost no one left to fight it." He held his cloak against the wind. 300 men. That's what's left of the Watch. 300 men to hold 700 miles of wall against what I saw out there. Against the dead. Jon looked north. "Tell me what you saw," Jon said. Sam told him. He told it the way he'd told no one else, because no one else would believe him. The dead men walking, the blue eyes, the cold that came before them. The specific horror of watching men you'd marched with stand up after they'd died and turn on the living with those blue eyes. He told Jon about Craster's Keep, the mutiny, the Watch turning on itself in the cold and the fear. The murder of Lord Commander Mormont by his own men. He told Jon about running through the snow with the dead behind him and a dragonglass dagger in his hand, and the White Walker that came for him and shattered like ice when the dragonglass touched it. "It can be killed," Sam said. "That's the thing. That's the only good thing I brought back. Dragonglass kills them. The old stories were right. We can fight them. We need men. And weapons. And someone with power to believe us before it's too late." Jon looked at his friend. "Robb believes you," Jon said. "I made sure of it. Every letter you ever sent me, I showed him. The North believes, when the dead come, when they reach the wall, the North will march. 1,000 men are coming, Sam. Supplies for 10 years. And when the wall is tested, the whole strength of the North behind it, and I'll be leading the North's part of it. He held his friend's gaze. You won't face it alone. I left the wall, but I didn't abandon this fight. I went to get an army, and I got one. Sam looked at him. When you left, Sam said, I was angry. Not for long, but for a while. I thought, he's leaving us to face it alone. He's choosing his brother over the Watch, over the realm, over everything. He held the wind. But you didn't, did you? You went and got the North. You did more for the wall by leaving it than you ever could have done by staying and dying on it with the rest of us. He almost smiled. You always did think 3 moves ahead. Even when it looked like running, you were thinking 3 moves ahead. I wasn't, Jon admitted. When I left, I wasn't thinking about the wall at all. I was thinking about Robb, about my father dead and my brother at war. The army for the wall, that came later. That's the thing that lets me live with the leaving. Not the reason I left. He held his friend's gaze. I left for the worst reason. Love. Just love. I left because I couldn't stand on a wall while my family died. And it happened to also be the thing that gets the wall an army. But I won't pretend I'm nobler than I was. I left for love and got lucky that love and duty pointed the same way in the end. Sam looked at him. That's the most honest thing anyone's ever said to me about why they did something, Sam said. Most people dress it up. You're telling me you did the selfish thing and it worked out. He held the wind. I think that's braver than pretending. Admitting you chose love over duty and got lucky. Most men would rather be thought noble than admit they were just human. They stood on the wall together, the deserter and the survivor, looking north into the dark where the thing was waking. And for a moment the years and the distance and the desertion didn't matter. And they were just 2 friends who'd found each other at the edge of the world and held on to the friendship through everything the world had thrown at it. Stay, Sam said. Not at the wall, I know you can't. But stay close when you go back south. Don't disappear into your new name and your new life. When the dead come, I need to know you're coming. I need to know I'm not waiting on the wall for an army that forgets about us. I won't forget, Jon said. I swear it on every god there is. When the dead come, I'm coming. With the whole North behind me. He held his friend's gaze. You held the wall while I got the army. That's the deal. That was always the deal, even when neither of us knew we were making it. You hold. I bring help. We face it together. Together, Sam said. They clasped arms on the top of the wall. Then they went down, and the negotiation concluded. And the thing that no one had thought possible became possible because both sides needed it to be. Jon Snow walked out of Castle Black a free man. He had walked in 2 years before, in the dark, a deserter on a stolen horse. He walked out in the daylight, beside a king, his vows dissolved, his name about to be changed. He stopped at the gate. He looked back at the wall. He had not looked back when he left. He looked back now at the enormous ice, at the place that had made him, and that he had abandoned, and that he was now, in a strange way, returning to in the only form he could, as the brother of the king who would keep it supplied and manned through the winter that was coming. You're free, Robb said, beside him. I'm free, Jon said. He looked at the wall. Sam's staying. He's going to be a Maester, or as close as the Watch can make him. He's going to keep telling people the dead are real until someone believes him. He held Robb's gaze. I want the North to believe him. Whatever else we do. When the dead come, and they're coming. Sam saw them. Sam killed one. I want the North ready. The North will be ready, Robb said. I'm sending the men, the supplies. And when the wall is tested, when whatever's up there comes for it, the North will march. I swear it. He held Jon's gaze. You didn't desert that fight. You delayed it. And when it comes, you'll lead the North's part of it. You and Sam, and whoever's left of the Watch. The living against the dead. He held the gaze. But not today. Today, we go home. Jon looked at the wall one last time. Home, he said. The word still felt strange. He'd never quite had one, the bastard at Winterfell, the brother at the wall, the deserter on the road. But Robb said home and meant Winterfell, and meant family, and meant the thing that Jon had crossed a war to get back to. And Jon decided that home was wherever the people you'd bleed for were. He turned from the wall. He went home. The 2 wars. What came next? 300 AC. On the road home from the wall, Robb and Jon talked about the future. Not the comfortable future. The family reunited. Winterfell rebuilt. The slow healing of what the war had broken. The other future. The one that Sam had seen north of the wall, and that Bran had seen in his dreams, and that Jon had felt in his bones since the first cold night in the haunted forest. The war that was still coming. The realm doesn't believe it, Robb said. They were riding through the Wolfswood, the specific northern forest that was the closest thing Jon had to a homeland, the trees old and dark and silent. The Lannisters, the Tyrells, the whole south. They think the Watch's reports are old men jumping at shadows. They think the dead are a story to frighten children. They thought that about the Targaryens too, Jon said, until the dragons came. The realm always thinks the impossible thing is impossible until it's standing in front of them. He held the reins. By then it's usually too late. So we don't wait for the realm. Robb looked at the trees. The north prepares. We stockpile dragonglass. I'll send to Dragonstone, to wherever the obsidian is, and we mine it and we arm with it. We keep the watch supplied and manned. We build the north into the thing that can meet the dead when they come, because no one else is going to. He held Jon's gaze. And you lead it. The military preparation. You know the wall. You know the enemy. You know what Sam saw. You're the one who turns the north into an army that can fight the dead. Jon looked at his brother. That's a strange thing to give a man you just made a prince, Jon said. Most princes get given comfortable things. You're giving me the war no one believes in. You're the only one who can fight it, Robb said. That's not a comfort, it's the truth. I'm a king, and I'm good at the politics and the battles between living men. But the dead, that's yours. You felt it on the wall. You believed it when no one else did. You left the wall, and the leaving turned out to be the way you got it, an army. He held the gaze. When the dead come, Jon, I'll be the king who marshals the realm, but you'll be the sword, the one who actually faces them. That's the role you've been walking toward since you took the black. The leaving didn't change it. It just changed how you get there. Jon rode in silence for a while. 2 wars, Jon said finally. That's what we built. The war against the living, which we won, sort of. The way you win wars you don't lose. And the war against the dead, which is still coming. The North has to be ready for the second one, even while it heals from the first. 2 wars, Robb agreed. The Stark fate, apparently. We don't get one at a time. He looked at his brother. But we face them together. That's the thing that's different now. When Father faced King's Landing, he faced it alone. When you faced the wall, you faced it alone. We kept facing things alone, all of us, and it kept getting us killed. He held Jon's gaze. Not anymore. The family faces things together now. That's what your leaving the wall actually changed. It put us back together. And a family that faces things together is harder to kill than one that faces them alone. Jon looked at his brother, the king. Father would be proud of you, Jon said. Father would be proud of both of us, Robb said. You especially. You did the thing he never learned to do. You bent a rule to save the people you loved, and you made it work. And you didn't lose your honor doing it. Father kept every rule and lost his head. You broke one and saved the family. He held the gaze. That's the lesson I hope my children learn. Honor matters, but people matter more. Father had it the other way around and it killed him. They rode home through the Wolfswood, the king and the prince, the two brothers who'd faced a war together and won it, and were already turning to face the next thing the world was building in the cold, dark north. Together this time, always together, from here. Winterfell, the name, 300 AC. Robb legitimized him in the Godswood at Winterfell. It was the right place. Not the Great Hall, not a sept, not the southern ceremony of parchment and seals. The Godswood, under the heart tree, in the place where Starks had named and married and mourned for 8,000 years. Robb did it there because the old gods were the only witnesses that mattered for this, and because Ned would have done it there, and because the Godswood was where the family's truest things happened. The family was there. Catelyn, Sansa, Bran, who had come down from his tower, who had changed in ways that Jon was still learning, the boy who had fallen and lived and who saw things now that he shouldn't be able to see. Rickon, wild and half feral from the war years, slowly being gentled back. Roslyn, Robb's wife, already carrying the specific quiet that suggested she might be carrying more than that. Robb stood before the heart tree with Jon. "In the sight of the old gods," Robb said, "I name you Jon Stark, trueborn, my brother, a prince of the north and second in line to the throne after my own children." He held Jon's gaze. "You crossed a war to stand beside me. You gave up your vows and risked your head for this family. You counseled me well when I would have erred, and you fought for me when I needed swords, and you have been, in every way that the word means, my brother." He put his hand on Jon's shoulder. "Jon Stark, welcome home, brother. For good this time." Jon Stark. The name landed in him like a stone dropping into deep water, the ripples spreading out through everything, through 14 years of being Snow, through the side table and the cool distances and the specific lifelong understanding that he was a Stark in blood, but never in name. The name he'd wanted his whole life and had taught himself not to want, because wanting it was a wound. Jon Stark. He looked at the heart tree. He thought about Ned, about his father, his uncle, technically, but his father in every way that mattered, the man who'd raised him and loved him and never once let him feel like less even when the world insisted he was. Ned, who had died in King's Landing with the secret of Jon's true parentage still locked inside him, a secret that Jon would never learn in this life, that would die with the few who knew it. It didn't matter. Jon Stark didn't need to know he was Jon Targaryen. The name he'd been given was the name he'd wanted, and the family that had given it was the family he'd crossed a war for, and the truth of his blood was a thing he could live without knowing, because the truth of his belonging was right here, in the Godswood, in his brother's hand on his shoulder, and his sister's eyes wet with joy, and even Catelyn, standing among them and not turning away. "Thank you," Jon said. It was inadequate. Everything was inadequate. "Thank you, brother." After, Catelyn came to him. "Jon Stark," she said. "My lady." "Catelyn," she said. "I think after everything you can call me Catelyn." She held his gaze. The cold distance was still there, would always be there. 15 years didn't dissolve in a single ceremony. But there was something else in it now. Something that hadn't been there before the war. Ned wanted this. He asked Robert once, years ago, whether Jon could be legitimized. Robert said no. Robert would never have allowed it, for reasons I didn't understand then. She paused. "I understand now. Or I understand that there were reasons." Ned carried things he never told me. She held his gaze. "He'd be glad that you're a Stark. He wanted it, and he couldn't give it to you, and now Robb has." She paused. "I'm glad too. I didn't expect to be, but I am." Jon looked at her. "That means more than the name," Jon said. "For what it's worth, your being glad means more than the name." Catelyn's eyes did something. She turned away before it could become more than it was. But she'd heard it. And he'd seen it. And it was enough. What if Jon Snow left the wall to fight beside Robb Stark? He became the thing that saved them. Not through a sword, though the sword mattered, Not through a battle, though he fought in all of them. He saved them by being there, by being the brother in the tent when Robb needed counsel, the voice that said, "Marry the Frey and keep your word." The presence that kept a grieving young king from the cliffs that grief and love and pride build for kings. In the version of events that never happened, Robb Stark married for love and broke the Frey promise, and died at a wedding with a knife in his heart, and his mother's throat cut beside him, and his army butchered in a hall. In this version, Jon was there. And Jon had watched their father die for the lack of the right kind of hardness, and Jon made sure his brother didn't die for the same thing. The cost was real. Jon gave up the wall. He gave up the vows he believed in, the brotherhood, the purpose he'd found in the only place that had ever offered a bastard a way to matter. He killed men on the road who were upholding the law he'd broken. He carried the desertion through the whole war, brought up in the cruel moments, a stain that no victory quite washed out. And he carried something worse, the knowledge that the real war, the war that mattered, the war against the dead, was happening at the wall he'd abandoned, and that Sam had gone north into the dark while Jon fought Lannisters in the south, and that the choice he'd made for love might have been a betrayal of everyone the wall protected. He never fully resolved that. Some choices don't resolve. You make them, and you live with them, and you never learn what the other path would have held. But he got his family back. He got Robb, alive, a king, the brother he'd crossed a war for. He got Sansa, home, embracing him in a courtyard, calling him brother at last. He got Catelyn's grudging, late, painful, almost acceptance, the closest she could come, which was closer than he'd ever dreamed. He got Bran and Rickon and a wall of Stark faces in a godsword and a name, Jon Stark, Trueborn, Prince of the North. The name he'd wanted his whole life and taught himself not to want. He never learned he was Rhaegar's son. That truth died in King's Landing with Ned Stark, locked in a grave with a man who'd carried it for love. Jon Stark lived his life not knowing he was the last dragon, not knowing he had a claim to a throne he'd never want, not knowing that the grey eyes he saw in the glass were Lyanna's and the blood in his veins was fire. He didn't need to know. He had what he'd crossed a war for. He had a family and a name and a home. And when the dead came, because they were coming, Sam had seen them. Sam had killed one with dragonglass north of the wall. Jon Stark would be ready. The North would be ready. 1,000 northern swords were already at the wall, and 10 years of supplies, and a king who had sworn that, when the wall was tested, the North would march. Jon would lead them, the deserter who became a prince, leading the living against the dead, at the wall he'd abandoned and returned to in the only way he could. He'd left the wall to save one brother. He'd end up helping to save them all. That was the thing about the choice he'd made in the dark on a stolen horse, the choice everyone told him was wrong, the desertion that should have ended him. It hadn't been a betrayal of the realm, it had been a delay. He'd gone to save his family first, and his family had become the strength that would save the realm second, and the vow he'd broken had bent back around into a purpose larger than the vow had ever been. Maester Aemon had told him, the night he left, that the choice would follow him whichever way he rode. It had. It had followed him through a war, and a peace, and a name, and a homecoming, and it had turned out to be the right choice after all. Not because it was easy, not because it was clean, but because it had put Jon Snow exactly where his family needed him, exactly when they needed him. And a man who is where his family needs him is a man who has answered the only vow that ever truly mattered. Jon Stark stood in the godswood at Winterfell, with his family around him, and the Hearttree watching, and the snow beginning to fall. He was discovering that parents he had always been trying to get home. He just hadn't known, until he got there. That home was the thing he'd been fighting for all along.
Bran went inside.